Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
All right, welcome back. 2 hours down, 2 to go here, 4 p.m. You know what that means. It's Football at 4. No Mike Gill today, no problem. I'm your host, Ryan Roth.
Don't let him hear that.
Well, I hope he is listening. It's fighting words. Danny Ryan also hosted, filling in. We're having some fun today, talking a lot of birds, as we always do here. And Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds will be joining us today, as he does each and every Monday. And just a quick reminder before we bring Moshe into the conversation, Football at 4 is brought to you by The Gallery. Get your game on here at The Gallery Bar, Booking Games in Ocean Casino Resort. Go to The Gallery. Go to Ocean. Go for the win. For more info, visit theoceanac.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Geoff Mosher, longtime Eagles insider. Give him a follow at Geoff P. Mosher. Moshe, how we feeling today, man?
I'm feeling great. Football is almost here. I love this last week of summer. I don't like to see the summer go, right? But I do like the fact that we get closer to football. I do like the early fall. And, hey, there's still some sun and warmth to enjoy here as we monitor the cutdowns at the deadline coming up.
Absolutely, and that's obviously something we're going to get to in this conversation, the latest surrounding the final 53, if you will. But to start us off, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, Moshe, but obviously want your 2 cents, want your opinion and insight on just the future and everything surrounding Eagles defensive end Derek Barnett right now.
Yeah, it's funny because Adam and I were having this conversation on the podcast last few as we tried to really figure out this 53-man situation. And the Eagles, as they usually are pretty loaded on the defensive line, but especially at edge rush, right? I mean, they've got Josh Sweat, they've got Hassan Reddick as your 2 starters. Brandon Graham, he's going to be here. He's a third guy. And you start to look at how many can you keep, knowing that, the whole outside linebacker, Sam linebacker, DN thing becomes, sort of redundant in parts of their defense. And you need some guys for special teams. And Patrick Johnson is a guy who does really well on special teams, but he's also a guy who's been out there on defense as an overhang player, edge rusher. And there's just only so many of these guys that you can keep. And there's always a surprise, too. And I remember saying to Adam, it's weird. Derek Barnett took a pay cut this offseason to stay on the team after signing a 2-year deal that we thought 2 years ago was a little bit high market for him. Good for him. But he took a pay cut. And I just didn't know how the Eagles were going to make this work, knowing they've got to go heavy at offensive line, probably go heavier at maybe corner and maybe even linebacker, some other positions where they're not as deep and they're looking at guys. And how are they going to be able to keep, 13, 14 defensive linemen when you put it all together? And Barnett's name came up. So it didn't surprise me to see the report today. Usually when you hear about a team giving a player seek a trade, but not necessarily moving on, just seeing, it usually means the team does want to move on and will move on. We saw that with Darius Slay, and it turned out to be the opposite. He wound up coming back in the offseason. But in this case, because of the numbers crunch that they've got at certain positions, I could see the team sort of being in move-on mode from Derek Barnett. They certainly have got a lot of decent guys on the edges right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Moshe, sticking on the defensive side and really on the defensive line.
Here we go.
Yeah, baby Rhino. Let's talk some Jaylen Carter. As you have an article posted, a recent article posted on InsideTheBirds.com and talking about the Birds rookie emerging into just a force. Tell us a little bit about what you wrote. Obviously, listeners can go check it out. But, obviously plenty of excitement. And there were some question marks surrounding his character, if you will, and his conditioning, but plenty of talent there. So, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, the story is really about Jaylen Carter, what he's shown the team so far, but really through Brandon Graham's eyes. And Brandon's a great person to ask or to just get information on anybody because Brandon's entering his 14th year As I wrote in the story, if you count the number of Pro Bowl pass rushers that he's been around since he was drafted in 2010, I got at least 10. I mean, Trent Cole, Babin, Connor Barwin, Fletcher Cox, Chris Long, Michael Bennett, Javon Hargrave, Sweat, Reddick, Quinn. So this guy has seen, a good pass rusher or two, or a good defensive lineman or two. And interestingly for Brandon, obviously being a first-round pick in 2010 who didn't get his career did not start off well. He almost fizzled out, but he was able to save himself, turn his career around, turn his life around, and become a guy who's been in the league for 14 seasons, a Super Bowl hero, a Pro Bowl pass rusher. So for him to kind of talk about taking Jaylen Carter under his wing, getting Jaylen to understand, football first, and what Brandon really said is this kid, no matter what he came in with as far as the car accident controversy, the pro day where he was overweight, he has been very focused since day one. He's been a good teammate. And Brandon has seen what we've seen in limited, either at training camp or even at a preseason game, is that the kid just has a lot of talent. And, he was a top three talent in this year's draft for a reason. Obviously, he fell to number 9 for a reason. And there's a gamble that the Eagles were willing to take in believing their culture because of guys like Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox. And so far, even though we're very early in the process here, Brandon is seeing a guy who's ready to come into his own. And, Baby Rhino, he said, is a great nickname because this guy can just slam into offensive linemen and knock them over. We've seen that.
Yeah, here's the quote here real quick. He goes, quote, "I'm loving the name Baby Rhino because that boy is, man, he's a ram. And if you get it all the way in shape, he'll be able to go all the time. He's definitely going to have people not wanting to see him every week."
Yeah, and Brandon went on to say what he has to learn, sort of like what Jordan Davis also had to learn last year and still have to learn, is that, when you're playing it at the professional level and you're not at Georgia where you're rotating in so much, you're going to have to play prolonged snaps. You're going to have to play more maybe as an NFL player than you did as a college player, which is hard to believe. But that's how good Georgia is. We know that, and how deep they are. So Brandon was saying, once he kind of gets his play conditioning going, because he really didn't play a whole lot during the preseason either, then you're going to see a force emerge. But right now, you'll probably see him flash, and you'll see glimpses of it, but he's going to rotate in and out because he's just not used to playing, 50, 60% of a defense. Once he gets that under his belt, where he learns the game speed and he starts to figure out his way in the NFL, he should be even more of a dominant force.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk with Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds, football at 4. Moshe, final 53 deadline tomorrow, Tuesday, August 29th, 4 p.m. Eastern. So give us the latest. Are we in for any surprises? Give us the insight here.
Well, I think that it's tough because the initial 53 on Tuesday does not stay the same for very long, right? And so what the surprises wind up not necessarily being that 53, but the one the next day and the day after. But obviously, I think everybody's wondering about the 5th wide receiver. You've got your top 4 in A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, Olamide Zaccheaus, but, is that 5th receiver going to be Britton Covey to return punts? Is it going to be Joseph Ngata? Would it have been Tyree Cleveland if he didn't get hurt? Is there somebody else, Devin Allen, who all of a sudden, finally came on as a kick returner? But the surprise could be that it's none of them. I mean, the Eagles could theoretically go into the season, or at least into the first week of practice, with 4 wide receivers, have a punt returner like Greg Ward or Devin Allen or anybody else on the practice squad, and then use those practice squad elevations for the first 3 weeks as they figure out, that situation there. I think the 3 weeks of elevations, which you can do for 3 players a week, really gives the teams sort of a strategical, I don't want to say advantage, not advantage over each other, but it allows them to be strategical in putting their 53-man together, saying, I can be, like the Eagles cut Josh Andrews. They cut Brett Toth, they cut Josh Andrews, and they have cut Cameron Tom. So they really don't have a backup center. Cam Jurgens is the backup center to Kelsey, but he's playing right guard, and you know that they don't like to really move offensive linemen in the middle of a game or for long term. So the Eagles have no backup center right now, and you say, well, what happens if Jason Kelsey gets hurt? Well, Josh Andrews is a guy who has snapped before. They could very easily sign him to the practice squad and then after everything resolves here, and then just elevate him for the first 3 weeks instead of having to keep him on the 53-man roster and take up a spot. So there'll be that to me is sort of the surprise. You might see the Eagles be thinner in certain areas than they normally are, but the areas where they're thin, they may just be bringing talent back on the practice squad to jockey the elevations for the first few weeks.
Hey, Geoff, Danny Ryan here. I want to thank you again for hopping on with us here today as we're live from the Ocean Casino Bar, Book, and Gallery. But I want to ask you a little bit about the running back room. You talked about possibly 5 receivers on the roster to start the season. What about the running back room? I mean, everybody knows it's Swift, Penny, Scott, Gainwell, and Sermon. Sermon seems like the running back that might get the short end of the stick. I mean, people aren't expecting him to really take a practice squad position due to the talent he showed off. But who do you think does get that short end of the stick in the running back room come tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, all indications are that it would be Sermon, who got a lot of preseason action, enough to the point where you think he put a decent enough tape out to look, if the Colts are going to trade Jonathan Taylor and Shane Steichen needs a running back, you would think Trey Sermon would be someone obviously he's familiar with from all last year. Same thing with Gannon out in Arizona. They have James Conner. They may feel like they need another good, like a bruising running back type to round out their roster. So maybe there's a trade there. But I haven't seen anything or heard anything to think that it's not going to be a four running backs on the 53 that are DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Kenny Gainwell, and Boston Scott.
Let me ask you about this as a follow-up as well. We talked right before Football at 4 about Jonathan Taylor and the possibility of him being a Philadelphia Eagle, the possibility of Howie Roseman pulling off a deal. What do you think about those rumors? Because, as I mentioned to Ryan, it might not be a great fit, but Howie Roseman, just because of his history, is always going to be involved in a buy-low trade like this. However, Ryan's over here saying he would give up a first-round draft pick for Jonathan Taylor. What do you think? Do you buy into any of these rumors linked to the Eagles? And, I mean, should we actually be invested in this?
I'd say this, like the Eagles don't have a future running back. They've got, even with Penny and Swift and Gainwell, they're all on 1-year deals, basically. So you could definitely understand Howie Roseman trying to seize an opportunity, like you said, to buy low or to be able to get Jonathan Taylor and have a future running back if he wanted to. The question then would be contract. If Jonathan Taylor is looking to be a top 3 paid running back in the NFL, then I could see that not really being the direction the Eagles want to go in. They pay other positions. They have paid running back in the past, but they've done it when they were able to get guys like Westbrook and LaShawn McCoy on team-friendly deals. So it all kind of depends right on Jonathan Taylor. Does he demand that the next team he plays for immediately extends his contract and makes him a top 3 highest paid running back? Or, because we've seen other situations where guys have just said, get me the bleep out of where I'm at. I can't stand this owner. I can't stand this, but whatever it is. And I don't even have to have my contract redone now. I don't mind putting that on the back burner just to get out of this awful situation that I'm in. There's a recent one. I know that happened the last year or two where somebody just wanted out and didn't have their contract redone. I don't remember who it is. So if Howie feels like he could get a Jonathan Taylor on the last year of his deal and even just work like a mini deal, like a 1 or 2 year deal where you're only paying the market rate right now for a running back, which is like $10 to $11 million, right, over those 2 years, annually, then I could see maybe it work out because then it's worth giving up whatever draft pick you may have to give up because you're getting him for a longer term deal that you might agree to him with, plus maybe the franchise tag after that if it came to that. But in the end, this is all a roundabout way of me saying I don't think it's highly realistic.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, they did it last year with CJ, so maybe they do it again.
There you go. Good point.
Yeah. All right, Geoff Mosher.
If they could get him for a 4th round pick, I think that they would jump on that.
All day, every day.
Yeah, that would be that would be a no-brainer. But we'll see. We'll see how that plays out and how everything else plays out. Roster final 53 tomorrow at 4 p.m. So make sure you tune in to Football at 4, powered by Inside the Birds tomorrow, just like we do each and every day. Moshe, we appreciate you, man. Thank you.
You got it, guys. Have a good one.
All right, you too. There he is. Geoff Mosher at Geoff P. Mosher on X, formerly known as Twitter. And Football at 4 is brought to you by The Gallery. That's where we are today, each and every Monday. The Gallery Bar Booking Games. Get your game on right here at the Gallery Bar Booking Games inside Ocean Casino Resort. Go to the Gallery, go to Ocean, go for the win. For more info, visit theoceanac.com. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.